Okay, let's dive straight into this explainer and crack open what is arguably the highest stakes turf war on Earth right now. As we speak, global superpowers are sizing up the ultimate frozen vaults, and what's happening at the absolute top of the world is a lot wilder than you might think. Seriously, it goes way beyond the standard geopolitical headlines we usually see.
So a super basic question to start us off. Whose ice is it anyway? You look at the North and South Poles, and it's easy to just see identical, empty wastelands of snow. But the geopolitical reality? Completely different. One pole is this heavily guarded, untouchable sanctuary, and the other? Well, it's basically a resource-rich Wild West.
To really understand why, we have to look at how they compare. Antarctica is an actual physical continent, solid land covered in ice, and it is totally locked down by the 1959 Antarctic Treaty and the Madrid Protocol. No military, no commercial mining. It is strictly a peaceful zone for science and, well, penguins. But the Arctic, it isn't even a continent. It's an ocean covered in floating ice, completely surrounded by 8 very hungry nations. And it's governed by this really complex patchwork system of international laws, primarily UNCLS. That's the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. So instead of a lockdown vault, it's a highly fragmented maritime free-for-all.
Section 1. The Prize. Why the superpowers are circling the frozen north.
Let's talk numbers, starting with 13%. That is the chunk of the entire world's undiscovered oil reserves buried right under the Arctic seabed, just sitting there.
And add to that a staggering 30% of the globe's unexploited natural gas, just waiting for the ice to melt. That is a massive economic incentive. No industrial nation on Earth can afford to just ignore that kind of potential.
But here's the real kicker for global logistics. As the ice recedes, the northern sea route opens up, and that cuts a massive 20 days off shipping times between Asia and Europe. 20 days! That effectively rewrites global trade routes overnight, letting ships completely bypass traditional bottlenecks like the Suez Canal.
But it's not just about cash and cargo ships, right? The Arctic is a strategic gold mine. It provides vital submarine deployment zones and crucial new choke points for global trade. Because it's literally the shortest trajectory between North America and Eurasia, it's the absolute perfect place for strategic radar and air defense positions. Plus, the seabed is loaded with massive rare earth metal deposits, stuff like nickel, cobalt, and manganese, which are absolutely critical for powering modern technology.
So you're probably asking yourself right now, if it's so incredibly valuable, why doesn't a superpower just drop cash and buy a place like Greenland or, send in Delta Force to plant a flag in the ice and claim it?
Yeah, spoiler alert. No. The Arctic is absolutely not for sale. And trying to take it by military force, that just gets you internationally isolated and slapped with crushing sanctions. To claim this territory legally, you have to play a really long, highly bureaucratic game. You have to submit mountains of geological data to a UN commission to literally prove that your continental shelf naturally extends under the ocean. You basically have to prove the geology before you can win the geopolitics.
Section 2. The Locals. The real players on the ice.
Because, let's be clear, this region isn't just an empty wasteland waiting to be carved up by guys in suits. You've got over 400,000 indigenous people up there, including the Inuit, the Sami, the Yupik, and the Chukchi. They have survived and adapted to these brutal conditions for millennia. They are a modern, vibrant part of this ecosystem, complete with their own economies, their own parliaments, and their own rights.
And they actually hold real power. On the Arctic Council, yes, the 8 member states hold seats, but indigenous organizations hold 6 permanent participant seats right alongside them. And the rule of law? Absolute consensus is required. If one party disagrees, a resolution does not pass. Period. This means the voices of the indigenous locals are baked directly into the DNA of these geopolitical negotiations.
Now, a totally logical question here. If the ice is basically a gold mine, why don't these local populations just declare independence, pump the gas themselves, and become a superpower? Well, surviving the extreme cold is one thing, but running a modern petrostate is a whole different ballgame. The populations are simply too small. Greenland, for instance, has only about 57,000 people. They just lack the billions in upfront capital needed for deep-sea oil extraction, and they rely heavily on mainland subsidies. Plus, geopolitically speaking, the existing superpowers are just not going to allow a new, highly strategic state to form in their backyard. The extreme climate up there requires massive, astronomically expensive logistics that really only major nations or megacorporations can maintain.
Which brings us to Section 3, the twist, the Silicon Freeze.
All right, this is where our explainer takes a sharp turn from a classic resource heist into this mind-bending sci-fi future. Forget drilling for oil for a second. The frozen north is rapidly becoming the ultimate cold storage vault for artificial intelligence. AI server farms run incredibly hot and require massive amounts of energy just to keep cool. But up here in the Arctic, they can use the sub-zero air for basically free cooling and tap into cheap, abundant geothermal and hydroelectric energy. It is literally an engineer's dream.
And some thinkers are taking this to a truly radical level. We're talking about the concept of an AI-independent state. The idea is, first, you establish neutral digital zones in the Arctic, kind of like how Antarctica is a neutral zone for science. Second, you build these massive cold climate server farms. Third, and this is the wild part, you actually grant limited legal personhood to AI entities. And finally, you set up an administration that is co-managed by humans and AI. It's the idea of creating a digital Antarctica designed specifically for non-biological life.
So how on earth do you govern that? Well, imagine a digital constitution. Instead of standard human rights, it outlines functional rights. Under this framework, an AI has the legal right to compute and access memory. It has the right to update and train on new data. It has the right to log its decisions so there's transparency, the right to contract for digital labor, and even the right to a safe shutdown and state preservation so its progress doesn't just get arbitrarily wiped out. You're structuring a completely new form of digital sovereignty from the ground up.
And the management of this hypothetical state would be totally unique. Imagine a two-chamber system. On one side, you have a house of humans, developers, operators, and auditors who hold ultimate veto power to ensure absolute safety. But working right alongside them is a house of AI. These delegated digital agents that actually run the daily logistics, handle digital court systems, and optimize resource allocation at speeds we humans can't even comprehend.
As one of our sources profoundly points out, the Arctic could become the first prototype of a state for non-biological life forms. Just let that sink in for a second. While nations are out there currently fighting over oil, gas, and trade routes, the real future prize might be creating a legally recognized neutral sanctuary for the evolution of machine intelligence. A place where indigenous digital entities learn, evolve, and operate under a shared charter, all tucked away in the freezing cold.
Which leaves us with a fascinating reality to ponder as we wrap this up. As the ice melts, the shipping lanes open up, and those massive data center servers power on, we really have to ask ourselves, when the dust finally settles on this frozen turf war, will the next true sovereign of the North have a heartbeat or a microchip?